Good afternoon. Yeah, everyone's still here. Good. It's still it is morning. Disclaimer, I flew in from New York last night, so it's actually afternoon for me. Well, it's great to see everyone here. Since I wrote Mindful Work a few years ago, I've been just amazed to see the degree to which mindfulness continues to take hold in the workplace, not only at big corporations, but at small businesses, medium enterprises. There's this sustained interest. And yet, I've also been a little surprised at how diffuse this movement still is. So for the next 20 minutes, we're going to hear about some of the most effective interventions that I've seen going on at big companies, one of the most kind of legitimate and aspirational of the consultancies bringing this to big companies. But we're also going to hear about some of the challenges. And despite the kind of confusion, and there's still some skepticism among mindfulness traditionalists about whether or not mindfulness should even be being taught at work, people keep showing up. And I think that just says a lot about where we are as a culture and a workplace. So that's where I want to start. Scott, you have more than almost 1,900 people who have come through meditation programs at LinkedIn, Mindful Moments. Why are they showing up? Is it for stress reduction? Is it for better health? What do they say when they come in the front door?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having us. Love to talk about this. And isn't it awesome we can all be together and talk about mindfulness at work in the first place? That's pretty amazing. There's certainly a range of people who come in. There are some people who have a practice and they just want to be with others, but that's certainly the minority. Kind of in the bell curve, most people, we have a meditation session every week that I lead, among others at the company. But I ask new people, like, okay, David, why are you here? Like, why did you come? Did she just talk you into this, or what are you doing here? And usually it's something like, I want to relieve my stress. I want to have some control of my mind. My life is just crazy, and I need to make it more calm. That's usually what people are looking for.
Parneet, is this the same thing you hear when you go into companies like Ford, Starbucks, GoPro, Yahoo? Same sort of reactions, or what else are people looking for?
Absolutely. I think stress is really top of mind for most people, and we are sort of talking about Wisdom 2.0 and the influence of technology in our lives. So I think people are really hitting up against the edge of our ancient brains in this modern world, and the fact that technology can be addictive, it's really distracting. So that's definitely one of the things people bring up. My schedule is packed. I have all of these notifications. I have a full email inbox. What do I do with that? But I think also more and more people, when we ask them, how can we as Wisdom Labs help you at work, they're looking for meaning. They're looking for purpose. They're looking for connecting with their teammates in a way that is authentic. And so we hear that all the time as well.
Mm-hmm. The irony here, of course, is that one of the biggest sources of stress is work itself. How do you address that? I mean, someone comes in and they say, my boss is driving me crazy, this company culture is nuts, and yet they're still looking in-house for some of the solutions. How do you address that tension, being both kind of the disease and the medicine at the same time, Scott?
Well, I think it's the reality. There's tons of things that are causing us stress, from our relationships to work to politics to the environment, and we're offering them something that helps for all of those. I think about the own drive, right? Your own ambition to get something done. And for me, I was always struggling with this. How do you have ambition and mindfulness in kind of the same container? It's a puzzle. And so for me, I think about the sand mandala. You ever seen the Tibetan sand mandalas? Well, they spend sometimes hours or days creating this beautiful thing where they're controlling every single individual grain of sand, and their focus is only on that, to create something beautiful. That's that drive, that's ambition, that creation. And then when it's done, to totally let it go, right? And I think there's something beautiful to that in the work that we do, in the relationships we have, and any of the things that drive us crazy in life. It's how do you make each second perfect and then let it go?
I love that metaphor, and I think in a way you have the luxury of speaking about it like that because you're in-house. When a company, though, comes to Wisdom Labs, I have a hard time believing they're saying, teach our employees about sun mandalas. They're looking for something.
We're open to that.
What are the big companies looking for, and is that different than what the individual employees who show up are looking for?
That's a great question. So I think most, when we approach companies or when companies come to us, absolutely the number one thing that they're looking for is how do we relate to stress differently? How do we help our workforce be a little more resilient? They sometimes use words like, better leadership and team management and collaboration. So that's definitely what they're looking for. And I just to go back a little bit to your previous question, which I think is really important. When I was still practicing in medicine, one of the reasons that I was attracted to mindfulness just for my own health and well-being was because I was suffering from some burnout, which we're seeing sort of across industries right now, especially in Silicon Valley and others. And we have to keep in mind that, burnout is both sort of at the individual level. So, what are my personal skills that I have to manage the stress and the work in my life? And it's a systemic issue as well. So I think your point is really well taken. And so for us as a company, we try to talk to the decision makers and we talk to the leaders and, help them, encourage them to attend some of our programs, because I think till those decision makers sort of have a visceral experience of the benefits of mindfulness, it can then open them up to the possibility of bringing this to the employees. But I think more importantly, Wisdom Labs is all about how can we create happy, healthy, wise, and compassionate cultures. And culture change, I don't think any of us have cracked the code on that, and it's a massive effort. So I think that's where we sort of need to lean more into for leaders to really take a look at the systems at play. How much take a look at the workload of employees, sit down with them, listen to them a little bit more, along with encouraging them to learn these skills of mindfulness and compassion.
I think the top-down leader question is an essential one. And in my reporting, I've seen situations where it really took that leader who was personally invested in this content and made it a safe thing to happen at his or her company. And I've also seen really successful bottom-up models where it was an affinity group, essentially, of employees who they got the ball rolling, and then it really took root. At LinkedIn, you, of course, have a leader who I think is here this weekend and for years now has been speaking about the merits of compassion and trying to create a healthier workplace environment. How important is that? I guess the flip side would be, do employees feel pressure to be nice to one another so they don't offend Jeff?
You'll get thrown out if you're not leading compassionately.
Right.
No, it's incredibly important to have a leader like Jeff Weiner who talks about compassionate leadership, who sets the tone for all of us. Employees are looking for belonging and inclusion, and to have a leader who creates an umbrella where it's a safe space to be whoever you are. And if that whoever you are includes a practice of mindfulness or meditation or spirituality or any of that, to know that it's okay to be able to bring that part of you to work is incredibly powerful. And then it's up to all of us to be that, right? So for my own journey, I've been practicing meditation since I was a teenager. And a couple years ago, I was meeting with our health and wellness director. And at the end of the conversation, I'm like, hey, Michael, do we do anything with meditation here? He's like, well, hey, wait a minute. Why? Do you have something? I'm like, I might have something. He's like, you should totally lead something. I'm like, okay. And so I went back to my desk and I did nothing for 3 months. And then I thought about it some more, and I'm like, I really want to do it. So then like a child, I went to the VP of HR. I'm like, I'm thinking about leading a meditation session. Is that okay? She's like, you should totally do it. And let me know how it goes when you're done. I'm like, oh, now I'm on the hook for it. And so I went back to my desk, and I did nothing for 3 months. And finally, I got out of my own way, and scheduled something, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And now people know me as the meditation exec, and they're inviting me to, marketing offsites to lead meditation sessions for 100 people. And it's become part of my identity at work. Yeah. And I can tell you that's incredibly freeing for me as a person. Yeah. And I can only imagine what it's like for people to come in the door and see this environment and feel welcomed, feel like they belong. So I think it's important for each of us to express it.
Yeah. Parneet, have you found a receptive audience in a company where there wasn't real buy-in from the top. I mean, how important is that as you go out there and are looking for new clients? Are these, I mean, you rattled off the list of companies backstage that you work with, and I know, I mean, I'm a business reporter, and I know most of those are kind of relatively, open, emotionally transparent CEOs, or at least they have cultures that skew that way. I mean, the list was not Goldman Sachs, like Fortress Capital, and the Trump Organization. These are not the companies where you're teaching mindfulness.
Bring it on. We're up for that challenge.
So to what extent are you actually just preaching to the choir?
So I'll give you an example, and I'll take a page from healthcare, which is historically sort of a very difficult industry to get into when you start talking about mindfulness and compassion, and where folks are really, they need to see the data, they need to see the science, they need to see the evidence. We were presenting at TED-Med, which is the medicine arm of the TED conference, and we had one of the directors of a big pharmaceutical company come up to us who had attended one of our sessions there, and she said, "Oh my goodness, we need to bring this to my team. We are in desperate need, we're suffering, we are all stressed out." And then there were a whole bunch of researchers at the pharmaceutical company. And that's where our conversation started. Through her, we were able to bring just sort of a taste of mindfulness workshop to their product development team. And then the next step that happened was that the decision maker of that team who attended the workshop said, "Hey, this is good. Let's look at next steps." So definitely, we've had instances of sort of more bottom up.
Good. That's good to hear. And I mean, I think that's an encouraging development over the last few years that, even in cultures where it's not coming straight from the top down, or even where there's not a strong, broad base of support, they're allowing it in, kind of through the side door. We'll see if it sticks. Let's talk nuts and bolts. Scott, if I attend a Mindful Moments session at LinkedIn, is this just like a room with no chairs in it where I can go be away from my boss? Or what are we actually doing?
Sure. Well, we have meditation sessions across 10 different locations across the world. We have an online, the Mindful Moments thing you mentioned, which is self-paced. So when you come I lead one of the 10, so I can only speak for mine. But when you come to mine, we have it in the workout room, the same place you do Zumba, or take a Tai Chi or kickboxing class. There are yoga bolsters, but we sit in chairs. We try to keep it. I've had people who come and they've changed clothes to be in the meditation session because they didn't know what to expect. Don't need to do that. It's cool. Just come as you are. And we do a 20-minute meditation, and then I'll leave it open, but we usually sit around and talk for another 15 or 20 minutes. And for me, that's where the magic is, because people have had this experience, and it's different for everyone. And then it's a chance to talk with your colleagues about really powerful things. Sometimes they're incredibly spiritual things. Sometimes they're much more in a secular way. But it's powerful. It's that satsang, or that union of people. So that's what it looks like when you come to mine. You're welcome to visit.
Yeah, great invitation. Parneet,
Thursdays at 4:30 and
there it is. That sounds great, but is there a progressive curriculum that you also try to think about when you go into a company for the first time and you've got a 5 or 12-week engagement? How do you take it beyond okay, that was a nice 30-minute or hour-long break from the hectic pace of my day, and try to instill skills and maybe some shifts in worldview that might create durable, lasting change?
Yes, David, I think that's really important. So at Wisdom Labs, we like to lead with the science as much as possible. And again, there's a lot of science that still needs to be done, but there's enough for us to make a good case for the benefits of mindfulness and compassion, both for our work performance, for building great relationships at work, but also for obviously our health and well-being. So and when you take a look at the research, in order for neuroplasticity, that function in your brain, that the mechanism in your brain that enables those changes in all of the brain areas related to learning and memory and perspective taking and empathy and compassion and all the other wonderful benefits of mindfulness and compassion, you have to practice, yeah, right? And you have to practice consistently. And so we really emphasize, or we pay real attention to the fact that we can't teach mindfulness or expect there to be a culture shift in an organization in a vacuum or by just sort of one-off engagements, which is why we really have taken great care to build a progressive learning curriculum that starts with very foundational skills of attention and then moves on to emotional regulation and building compassion. And we also layer that with elements of the science of behavior change, because talk is great, but when the rubber hits the road, how much are you actually practicing on an everyday basis? So we talk about the science of behavior change. We help people with skills around integrating little mindful moments throughout their workday. And our programs also include a peer support program, sort of an ambassador program, where people can, we provide the content and people can get together in a conference room and meditate as well.
That's great. The results. Scott, what have you seen? This has been going on at LinkedIn for years now. Has it changed the culture at all? I mean, it's still a very intense competitive culture. You guys just went through a big acquisition. It's a crazy political time. People, I imagine, are not walking around blissed out on LinkedIn campus every day. But what results have you seen?
So I think the results are much more on an individual level versus a broad culture level. So we're a company of 10,000 people. So let's just talk numbers. About 2,000 people have gone through our online mindful moments, 3 or 4 hour self-paced training. Probably at least somewhere between 600 and 1,000 people have come to one of our meditation sessions at least once, right? So it's not like we're doing it every day. It's not like we start every day with 10,000 people, sitting for half an hour.
It's something to work up to.
We have, it's part of the grand plan.
Nice.
So I'd say the changes are happening at an individual level. So as an example, every week, if there's somebody new, I ask them, hey, why did you attend? And like I said, mostly it's around, they want peace. And when we're done with the meditation, I say, okay, did you find that? And just last week, one of the guys was saying he's an engineer, and so he's in the heart of the company trying to build product. And he's saying, since I've been coming, I discovered I can find the answers more clearly. I'm able to separate myself. It's almost like I'm out of my body looking at this experience, and I was able to solve this problem I've been struggling with. And I was like, bingo, we have a start. Right? Because like you're saying, I can get almost anybody to meditate for 20 minutes. But it's this path of getting them excited about it, letting them see the results, letting them have their own experience to the point where they can build up and have their own lifelong practice that literally changes them. And as they change, then it changes the culture, then it changes who we are as a group.
All right, that's mindful work indeed. Parneet, talk about the results you're seeing, because as we were talking about backstage, a big hurdle to even getting companies interested in this is coming to them with persuasive data and saying, like, no, this isn't just woo-woo stuff. Here's the data and the actual points that I can, the results that prove that at some level something's happening here. Are you looking for biometric markers? Are you looking for self-reported stress levels? What's the data that you're focused on, and what have you seen so far?
Yes, I think that's really key, because we often find ourselves in a sort of a catch-22 situation, right? When we come to the companies, they want to see the data, but in order to get the data, we have to do the work in the companies. But thanks to some of our really forward-thinking early clients, we now have, so we look at levels of mindfulness and resilience before and after sort of our 5-week-long engagements, and we've seen improvements of up to 17 and 18% in stress levels and resilience levels. And we've also had the opportunity to start some very interesting research, taking a look at blood markers and gene expression levels. And we were able to do this at an advertising agency in a 12-week program. And again, the early results are really encouraging. We saw that after the 12-week program, levels of inflammation went down, immunity improved, and folks reported that they felt more connected to their colleagues.
Wonderful. I'm going to put you on the spot. One tip for staying mindful at work.
Ask yourself, how can I be kind today?
How can I be kind? Scott?
Stop and breathe.
Stop and breathe. Okay. Stop and breathe, everyone. Thank you very much, Scott and Parneet.
Thank you.
Aspirational of the consultancies bringing this to big companies, but we're also going to hear about some of the challenges. And despite the kind of confusion, and there's still some skepticism among mindfulness traditionalists about whether or not mindfulness should even be being taught at work, people keep showing up. And I think that just says a lot about where we are as a culture and a workplace. So that's where I want to start. Good afternoon. Yeah, everyone's still here. Good. It's still it is morning. Disclaimer, I flew in from New York last night, so it's actually afternoon for me. Well, it's great to see everyone here. Since I wrote Mindful Work a few years ago, I've been just amazed to see. Scott, you have more than almost 1,900 people who have come through meditation programs at LinkedIn, Mindful Moments. Why are they showing up? Is it for stress reduction? Is it for better health? What do they say when they come in the front door?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having us. Love to talk about this. And isn't it awesome we can all be together and talk about mindfulness at work in the first place?
The degree to which mindfulness continues to take hold in the workplace, not only at big corporations, but at small businesses, medium enterprises, there's this sustained interest. And yet, I've also been a little surprised at how diffuse this movement still is. So for the next 20 minutes, we're going to hear about some of the most effective interventions that I've seen going on at big companies, one of the most kind of legitimate and...
That's pretty amazing. There's certainly a range of people who come in. There are some people who have a practice and they just want to be with others, but that's certainly the minority. Kind of in the bell curve, most people, we have a meditation session every week that I lead, among others at the company. But I ask new people, like, okay, David, why are you here? Like, why did you come? Did she just talk you into this, or what are you doing here? And usually it's something like, I